Welcome to the NBA Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden, taking a look at tonight's 8-game Wednesday slate for FanDuel and DraftKings. This is actually our last NBA slate breakdown that we'll be doing together as we kind of transition into the baseball season. And I think we're both pretty excited for the transition.
Yeah, it's been a very long season. The season's winding down. Most teams only have, maybe 12, 13 games left. So it's been fun. It's been interesting. There's been a lot of great storylines and some heartbreaking moments with late scratches and whatnot. But definitely looking forward to MLB season and looking forward to knocking out the slate where the sites actually included all the games tonight.
I would have been fine with the shortened date game slate or a shortened light game slate that starts at 8.
Yeah, I mean, that leaves off, Toronto,
Memphis.
Cleveland.
It leaves off Memphis and it leaves off Miami and
Yeah, well,
Charlotte.
easy part is just to ignore Memphis at this point because who knows what they're going to do. I mean, their injury report yesterday was only like one player, and I imagine somebody's going to be a late scratch. So,
I think they turned it in and they're like, this does not meet the word count. Please take this back and redo it.
yeah, you need to fill up all 280 characters.
But yeah, you mentioned the Toronto Cleveland game here first. Should be a fun one. Obviously, Toronto's been resting players, but they scheduled it well, so they're not resting anyone for Cleveland here.
Well, maybe. I mean, they might still end up resting like Serge Ibaka or someone. So we'll
Don't
definitely
do that to me.
we'll have to keep an eye on it. I mean, there is incentive for them to kind of like let Cleveland win this game, because then they could avoid Cleveland until I think the actual Eastern Conference Finals. So if Cleveland can move up to number two, I believe. So there is incentive for them to try and maybe lose this game. So who knows? Maybe they will rest somebody. I hope not, because this game is very intriguing from a storyline and fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, like I think you mentioned Ibaka, but we'll start with the guards here. Lowry rested the other night, DeRozan last night. I like both these options here. I mean, both are below the 8K mark on FanDuel. DeRozan's 8K on DraftKings. I like both these guys. Obviously, both in good spots. I still don't even feel like this game is going to be really entirely popular, maybe outside of like LeBron. Like I still think you're going to get DeRozan and Lowry at pretty moderate ownership here, despite a good matchup.
Yeah, for sure it could happen, and I think we do obviously need to keep an eye on DeRozan's status. They ruled him out for rest, and then later on said he had a thigh contusion. He is technically questionable for tonight's game. So if he were to sit, obviously that would make Lowry just an insanely good play and would open up, DeLon Wright and a couple of these other guys. But assuming DeRozan and Lowry both play, I love both options. It's really tough to differentiate the two as far as which one would be the better play. I'm leaning towards Lowry. Personally, just because Houston does really struggle against spot up shooters, Lowry is the better spot up shooter this season, and he is just a little bit cheaper, especially on DraftKings. So that's where I would go, but you can't go wrong with either option there. And then I think DeLon Wright is a viable value option tonight, assuming Fred VanVleet misses this game. He's been playing really well. He's still really cheap, and he's going to get run regardless. So I think he's a very viable value option to target here from the Toronto guard position.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the shooting guard eligibility on DraftKings. I mean, he's shown GPP upside. I mean, he's had 30 points in 2 of the last 3 games. Like you said, the minutes are going to be there. I mean, he's played 28, 31, 39, and obviously a couple of guys have been in and out of the lineup, but below 5K, like for a guy who does have 30 plus fantasy point upside, I'm in.
Yeah, for sure, and it's an excellent matchup for him. And if maybe he can fall into a few extra steals and really boost that upside. But he has scored in double digits in 3 straight games, so that's very promising. And like I said, without Fred VanVleet in there, if he is not able to give it a go tonight, that just boosts his minutes upside.
Yeah. Front court here. You mentioned a possibility of Serge Ibaka. I know there was a tweet that came out a few days ago that he was one of the 3 that they were going to be looking to rest. Obviously, it's a good spot like for Ibaka and for whoever would fill in. Cleveland's been pretty awful against power forwards of late. I'll probably be going to the well with these price tags.
Yeah, I do really like Serge Ibaka in the spot, assuming he is able to give it a go. You mentioned Cleveland being really bad against power forwards. They're 20th in fantasy points allowed this season. I do like the spot for him. He's really cheap. He's down to 5,200 on DraftKings. I assume he's pretty cheap, 54 on FanDuel. Like that's a solid cash game price. He offers a pretty solid floor. And he does have upside. Again, I mentioned Cleveland being a team that does struggle against spot up shooters. Ibaka, not incredibly efficient when doing it, but he is spotting up on almost 40% of his possession. So I think he's a very viable option, and there's some rebounding upside for him here. If he does sit, I think, the Pascal Siakams and the OG Ananobis and some of these guys that are going to fill in, very, very viable options at their current price tags. I mean, especially on DraftKings, Siakam and Pirtle are both under 4K, would be excellent value options. And Jonas Valanciunas made it into my tournament article today just because he's a guy who, we know he's going to play limited minutes. He is coming off a couple of down games, but like we're talking about a guy with 40-plus fantasy point upside, and he notched those totals in 3 games prior to his last 2. And the last time he played Cleveland, 18 minutes, 15 points and 18 rebounds in 18 minutes. Like he has a ton of potential in this spot, and 6,600 is a solid price. And I don't think anyone's really going to look to go there tonight just because, he is a guy that plays limited minutes.
Yeah, no, I like the call there. That's about it for me on the Toronto side. Any interest in anyone else?
No, I mean, if like DeRozan isn't able to go, you might see some, extra minutes for CJ Miles, maybe some extra shot attempts. It's one of those things like if somebody sits, then you can look at some of the other like value guards, but none of them have a ton of upside. But I would lean CJ Miles over any of them, and it's a revenge game for him.
Oh, true. Cleveland side of things here. I think it's interesting just because of LeBron's price, and obviously he's just been crushing of late. You have Giannis on the slate. Like, you can't deny just what LeBron's doing. Like, it's insane. He's basically been a walking triple-double of late. Do you worry about the price tag at all in a matchup like this, or do you expect more of the same?
I mean, I do worry a little bit. Obviously, he's still a very solid cash game option. I do think the matchup does kind of limit his upside because we do know Toronto very, very, very good defense this season, and they've been good against small forwards. I mean, 4th in fantasy points allowed, only giving up like 38 per game. A little worse recently. They're 15th in defensive efficiency against the position, but I mean, it's LeBron, and we're talking about a guy that's averaged a triple-double since like early February or something like that, and if you want to roll him out, feel free. I still think I like Giannis more, and he's cheaper. So that's probably the route that I would be going tonight. But you can't go wrong locking in LeBron, and he's in playoff form at this point. I mean, he's coming off his career best 16th triple double this season. It's pretty insane for him to be this age in 15th season or something like that, and notching 16 triple doubles in a season. But yeah, if you want to roll him out, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you. Like, as far as like, I'm leaning Giannis over LeBron just because the matchup with the Clippers, which we'll get to, is obviously a better spot to attack. But yeah, I mean, obviously hard not to like LeBron in this spot. But it's weird because I don't like a ton of Cavs options now that Kevin Love's price is back up. Obviously, had a solid debut from his injury. He played 24 minutes, put up over 30 fantasy points. Like, I'm okay with it, but I don't know. I think I might be leaning other directions than like a Kevin Love at power forward.
I don't mind it in tournaments. It's not somewhere that I'm really looking to go in cash games, but I mean, he still has potential to put up a solid outing here, especially on DraftKings. He's 6,400. Over on FanDuel, it's probably a pass because I know he's up to like 73. So I don't necessarily mind it here in this spot, but I'm not really looking to go there. And the potential return of Tristan Thompson, I don't know what that's going to do to his role. It probably just phases out Jeff Green at this point. But I mentioned Thompson potentially coming back, Rodney Hood potentially coming back. We know Kyle Korver is going to be out for this game. So that's going to open up minutes in the backcourt. Maybe some Jordan Clarkson, who's cheap, and Toronto has kind of struggled recently against point guards and shooting guards. He would be maybe the only guy that I really have interest in from this backcourt.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially over on FanDuel. Like, value shooting guard has just been awful the last few games, and that continues to be the case tonight. I think Clarkson's a fine option just because there is basically a lack of options. And, without Korver, we're going to look at some minutes. Obviously, you mentioned, possibly the return of Hood, but you're probably still going to see 25, 28 minutes for Clarkson here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, without Korver, those minutes are going to be there. And obviously, they're Chetty Osman's not in there either, so that's going to open up some minutes. And J.R. Smith is J.R. Smith, and apparently they just don't want to play him that much anymore. So, yeah.
I don't know. There was a thread going around of J.R. Smith and just his unreal antics on the court of like playing hero ball, and it was pretty comical. And I think that would probably sum up why he's not seeing a lot of time lately.
That, obviously the soup incident. So
that's true. Yeah, that's very true. Anytime you throw soup at someone, I think there has to be some sort of consequence.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's move on here to Memphis, America's darling NBA team.
Woo!
I don't even feel like we have to deal with them tonight. Like, it's not a good spot. Like, Philly's been fine, obviously very solid defensively. Some guys are probable, but I don't even think that means probable anymore.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think you have to go there. If you want to sprinkle some Memphis guys in tournaments, I guess go for it. But like, how many times do you have to pee on the electric fence before you just get tired of getting shocked? Like, just it's not a spot where like it's just no reason to risk it anymore because they are tanking, even though they're not saying they're tanking. These guys are just being late scratches after absolutely no indication that they're even injured. So maybe some Tyreek Evans if you want to, Marc Gasol if you really, really want to, but I'm not looking to attack the Memphis side of this game at all.
No, I'm not. I think Evans might be the only one I would get a GPP share of, and obviously you just have to know the risk with these guys. But like, I don't have a ton of interest in the front court options just going up against guys like Saric and Embiid. Like, I don't mind Gasol. I think I still prefer like DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard for a little bit more though, and maybe even taking some shots cheaper.
Yeah, and even with some of these guys, like with their minutes, they're just insanely unpredictable. Like Jarrell Martin, after playing 30 plus minutes in back-to-back games, gets 12 minutes against Brooklyn.
Well, he was in foul trouble that game. I remember swearing at Jarrell Martin for
was he?
Yeah, so he fouled out. So I remember that very vividly.
He fouled out in 12 minutes. Well, that's impressive. So yeah,
a real Marquise Chris type game there.
Oh, well, there you go. So I guess he's cheap. So if you want to hope he stays out of foul trouble, I don't know how you get in foul trouble against the Brooklyn Nets, but there you go.
No. Yeah, I guess he'd be probably the only other cheap viable option, but like I don't have a ton of interest in like Dylan Brooks or JaMychal Green or any of the really guards outside of Tyreek Evans.
Yeah, no, and I think that Andrew Harrison, like he's coming off a solid game, but I think that would not have happened if Tyreek would have played. So I don't know that I'd want to go back to the well there, but maybe if you want to sprinkle it in tournaments, go for it. But no.
Yeah. Look at the Philly side here. I still think you can go look at Ben Simmons. Continues to be very solid, averaging 44 fantasy points over his last 5. Up over 10K on FanDuel. I think for me, he's still probably more of a DraftKings play where, he is at a discount, especially from guys like Giannis and James. If you don't quite want to go up to that small forward spot, I think Simmons is an excellent option.
Yeah, he really is. He's definitely he's a good cash option, as we've talked about, just because his ability to rack up peripherals. I mean, he's got double-digit assists in 4 straight games, double-digit rebounds in 3 of the 4, so triple-doubles in 3 of the last 4 games. So even like he's providing a solid floor and he's providing upside, and especially on DraftKings at his 9K price tag, he's still got plenty of upside. It's an excellent matchup against a Memphis team that is 21st in defensive efficiency against point guards. Over the last 10 games, they lack rim protection. And their rebounding has not been great recently. So I think you can go back to the well here with Ben Simmons, and he's an excellent tournament and cash game option.
Yep. What are your thoughts on Embiid here? Like 9,700. I mean, he's been solid. He's been over 50 fantasy points in each of the last 4 games. I don't know, though. Like, I feel like I'm still kind of going other center directions. Like, I like Jokic a little bit more for 100 less.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any case against him or really for him. I don't feel strongly about using him tonight. So, like, if you're dying to get him in your lineup, feel free. But it's not someone that I'm heavily targeting here.
Yeah. Guys like Robert Covington, Dario Saric, I think they're in play. I think Saric is moving out of the cash game category for me, though. But it's weird because I don't even think he has a ton of upside. It's just the last 2 games, I mean, in good spots has let me down.
Yeah, it's been a tough go for him, but that's kind of led to his price really, really, really falling here, and he's down below 6K on DraftKings. He's let's see, what is he? 62 on FanDuel. I think he has plenty of tournament upside here. Like if he can get back over, the 30 plus or the 30 fantasy point mark, which he was consistently eclipsing prior to his recent stretch of bad games. So I think if you want to roll him out in tournaments, feel free. He's not someone that I would go with in cash games. I would still look at Reddick here in cash games. Still a solid spot for him. And Covington is always tournament viable, but I don't necessarily love the spot for him.
No, I don't mind it. Like, you look at Memphis, like 28th in defensive efficiency against small forwards the last 10. Like, had a solid game last time out against them. Didn't shoot particularly well in that one. We've seen his floor be a little bit higher outside of the Brooklyn game. But yeah, like he's always just a GPP game. That Brooklyn's the staple of why he's just a GPP play.
Yeah, it really is. Like he really has a low floor at times because he's wildly inconsistent. But I mean, he only played 24 minutes in that game, so I do have to give him a little bit of a break there.
Yeah. That's it for me on the Philly side. I don't really have any interest in like the bench guys at all.
Yeah, neither do I.
Knicks in Miami. Miami favored by 10.5 here, 214 total. Looking at this Knicks team here, I don't have a ton of interest. It's funny. Was Kyle O'Quinn literally the first player that we talked about before we got on the pod?
I believe so, yes.
So let's start with some Kyle O'Quinn, who continues to be a very solid fantasy points producer. I'll let you kind of lead the way here just because I know you put him in your article.
Yeah, I put him in my article. Obviously, we're talking about a guy that's been rebounding really well, 10, 9, 9 over the last 3 games. Solid fantasy points producer. I mean, you mentioned it. He's been over 20 fantasy points in like 7 or 8 straight games. He's eclipsed 30 fantasy points in a couple of those games. And minutes, like he's still getting, the 20, 22, 24 sometimes. It seems like they're pretty much not going to play Cantor that much because, they don't like the fact that he spoke out against the direction the team was going because he's been playing limited minutes. And I think O'Quinn, despite his ability to like rack up fantasy points quickly, I think he's still going to go overlooked because most people just don't look that direction unless somebody is out, and there isn't anybody outside of Porzingis that's out for this team tonight. So I really do like him, and especially on FanDuel where the blocks and steals really boost his ceiling. He's been notching multiple blocks and steals in pretty much every game over his last like almost 10 games. So I love him here. He's going to be a great tournament option tonight.
Yeah, you mentioned like he scored 6 total real points over the last 2 games, yet has put up 26 and 24 fantasy points on FanDuel. And like you said, like a lot of that is just driven off of rebounds and defensive stats. And I obviously expect him to rebound really, really well here tonight with this Miami team missing Whiteside.
Yeah, that's going to be huge, and this Miami team has really struggled to rebound since he went down. So we saw it with Jokic putting up a solid game on the boards, and I think this is a spot where where O'Quinn just kind of crushes them.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in really anyone else. Tim Hardaway Jr. on FanDuel is interesting at 6K just because there are such a lack of options really below that mark. Miami's been actually pretty bad against shooting guards of late. They're on the 4th most fantasy points in their last 10. They're bottom 10 defensive efficiency. Like, if Tim Hardaway's still going to play 30 minutes and jack up 15 shots, he's worth a look here.
Yeah, he's definitely worth a look in tournaments. I think Michael Beasley's worth a look in tournaments. The guard situation, I don't know that I really want to mess with it, although Moutier is questionable. So if he is not able to suit up for this game, maybe get some extra run for Trey Burke. They're giving some of these other guys some run, like you're seeing some Troy Williams get run. You're seeing Isaiah Hicks get run. Hicks is an interesting value option here, but it's mostly just Kyle O'Quinn and I think Kyle O'Quinn is cash viable, which is crazy to say. And then like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Beasley in tournaments for me.
Yeah, if you're wondering why we're skipping out on like the last few NBA pods, it's because we just said Kyle O'Quinn in cash.
That's pretty much it.
Anyone else on the Knicks here?
No.
Miami side of things. Let's break down the front court here. Like, it still kind of remains the same. Whiteside and Wade, they're doubtful, right? Like I thought they were listed as out last night, and then they're doubtful.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to play though.
Yeah, I mean, I still think obviously you're going to be looking at like the Olniks and Richardsons and Adebayos here. Obviously, we've seen quite a bit of upside out of Johnson and Olnik of late, like regardless of the overtime game, like they've shown it. Prices obviously come up a little bit. FanDuel, I still think all those guys are extremely too cheap.
Yeah, I do love their prices over there on FanDuel. It's really a situation where it's whichever one kind of fits your lineup construction. I do think I'm still leaning Olenek in this spot just because the 25% usage rate with Whiteside with Whiteside and Wade off the floor. But I mean James Johnson's creeping up there too. So either option's fine. If you want to use both, feel free to use both. It's a solid way to go. I love Josh Richardson in this spot against the Knicks team that really struggles against spot up shooters. So that bodes well for him and Wayne Ellington, who is a little bit cheaper. So I think both those options are viable too.
Thoughts on Dragic here? I kind of feel like FanDuel, obviously, I think it's a little bit different story. Like, it's weirdly, I like all the Miami Heat prices over on FanDuel. He's 7K there, which I think is viable. He's just around, I think, too many options for me, like Bledsoe, like, Lowry, like Jamal Murray, some of these guys, and there's a few guys cheaper where I've been such on an anti-Dragic train, I think, the last few weeks.
I think he's proven to be someone that we can kind of trust in cash. I mean, I know he still didn't have a ton of upside in that Denver game. I mean, it took him 42 minutes to get like 40 fantasy points, but I mean, the usage is still there for him. So if you're wanting someone that should be safe given the matchup, I think you can roll him out in cash. And if you want to sprinkle him in tournaments, go for it. But I think there's better options for tournaments.
Yeah, I do too. And just because like I'm probably going to be getting most of my Heat exposure to the front court, like I don't know how much I'll be getting Dragic in as well. I think the other guy that we can take a look at is Josh Richardson, who coming off a solid game against Denver, played well against the Lakers in a game that he was kind of expected to be at. He didn't shoot well, but still racked up some peripheral stats. I don't mind him here in this spot. It's obviously a good spot against the Knicks defense that's obviously clearly given up on the year. I'll go back with Richardson, and obviously I'm a little worried about Winslow.
I don't have a ton of concern about Winslow. Like, I still think he has upside. It's one of those situations where if he's able to get hot from the floor and pull down some boards, like he'll be fine. And this is a spot against the Knicks team that has kind of struggled to rebound. So I don't necessarily mind Winslow here. And I mean, I mentioned Richardson a little earlier. I think he's one of my favorite options, especially on DraftKings at his price.
Yeah, that Richardson's price tag's pretty nice. That's about it for me. Like, Wayne Ellington, I guess you can continue to look at. Like, I think he's probably your better, cheaper option, I guess, over on FanDuel if you really are digging down for a punt option.
Yeah, I dig the price on him and the ability to, like I said, the Knicks do struggle with spot-up shooters, which really helps Wayne Ellington here.
Yeah. Charlotte, Brooklyn next year. Charlotte by 1.5, 221 total. Looking at the Charlotte team, Batum still is ruled out for tonight's game. Cody Zeller questionable. I don't mind this Charlotte team. I feel like it's a little bit of a trap for some reason, though.
I think so as well, and I think it just has to do with what I mentioned last time out. They are going to start giving some of these younger guys run because they are almost eliminated from the playoffs. I think they have to lose like 7 games. I think 7 games is their magic number to actually be officially eliminated, but like you're still way behind in the standings. So I think they're going to start to give some of these younger guys some run. But I mean, Kemba Walker still played 40 minutes last game. If you want to roll him out, feel free. Shot 1 of 9 from 3-point range against the Sixers. Not a great shooting performance out of him, but he still managed 24 points, almost a double-double. He's a fine tournament option here. Its price is really up there, but I think he's, like I said, I think he's a fine tournament option. Without Batum, Lamb, feel free to go back to the well with Lamb. And I think Malik Monk is a very, very solid tournament value option in the spot. Not playing a ton of minutes, but he's putting up solid numbers in his limited minutes, and we know it's a great matchup.
Have you seen Jeremy Lamb's price on FanDuel
yet? No, I don't. I probably don't want. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm glad we got that reaction on there. 6,600 for Jeremy Lamb. They hit the multiplier like on him a couple of times. Um, I still think like you have like some Wilson Chandlers and a couple of guys cheaper that you can go with, or like maybe a Denzel Valentine if you're looking, because that price is not value anymore.
No, he's still fine for cash, but yeah, not someone that you can consider in tournaments. And you probably weren't looking at him in tournaments anyways, just because the ownership is going to be there tonight.
Yeah. Dwight Howard, like I still think you obviously have to take a viable look because he is a center. I know the minutes have been kind of up and down of late, coming off 2 poor games against Philly and New York. But I still like the upside here. I still think we can see a big time performance from Howard.
Yeah, obviously, anytime we get a center against the Brooklyn Nets, they're almost always going to be a lock and load. It is a little concerning. He has played limited minutes in the last 2 games. Obviously, the Knicks was a blowout. The Sixers wasn't necessarily that close either. And he did have 5,000 that game, but you could definitely go back to the well here with Howard. I mean, even in limited minutes against this Nets team, averaging 17 points and 15.5 rebounds per game in their 2 previous meetings. So if you want to go back there, feel free. I mentioned they were giving some of the young guys a little bit of extra run, so that could lead to more minutes for Willie Hernan-Gomez, who played 20 minutes against the Sixers, 13 against the Knicks, 20-plus fantasy points in both. Still only 3,400, so I think he's a viable tournament option here.
Yeah, I like that call. That's about it. Like, I don't have a ton of interest in like the Marvin Williams or Frank Kaminsky's tonight.
No, I'm not gonna go near any of those guys.
Brooklyn side of things here, pretty good spot. Like, I don't mind some of these guys. Some of these guys are priced up a little bit on FanDuel, but I do want to start with Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. He's just been playing really, really well of late. It's obviously a good spot. He had a ceiling game against Charlotte last time out. They've just been struggling immensely against the forward position for most of the season. And I think Hollis-Jefferson, I mean, if we're back to 30-plus minutes here, like, I'm on board, even at higher price tags. Like, I'm not going to knock him for being up at these prices.
Yeah, I won't either. I mean, it's a great matchup for him. Obviously, Charlotte 26th in defensive efficiency against power forwards over the last 10 games. Let's see. They are giving up 118.3 points per game over those 10 games. So, like, this is a great spot for all of the Brooklyn players. Hollis-Jefferson, you mentioned the minutes have been outstanding. Field goal attempts, double-digit in 3 straight. His ability to rack up the rebounds, and also he's getting blocks, steals, assists as well. Like, he's just an all-around great player. I absolutely love the price for him. I like the price for DeMarre Carroll, who comes in a little bit cheaper. I think he's a great way to get exposure here, and even him against the Hornets in some of these games, he's been solid. 31 minutes, 34 fantasy points in the last game. Feel free to go with DeMarre Carroll. I think he's the safer cash option, and RHJ has the tournament upside.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think obviously Carroll, like on FanDuel, is a solid cash game option, and he's 800 less than Jeremy Lamb, so that's also a bonus. That's kind of it. Like, I don't mind like taking a flyer like on D'Angelo Russell, but I mean, I think his price might be kind of at a point where I'm okay with hitting my wall if this is kind of what we're going to get as far as like the ceiling goes.
Yeah, it's tough just because, like, the minutes, he's probably not going to go back over 30 minutes anymore now that Alan Crabb is back, and, you know, they have Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie and all these other guys. I mentioned Alan Crabb in the tournament article. We saw him just torch the Hornets the last time out. The Hornets really, really bad. They're the league's worst defense against spot-up shooters this season, and that's pretty much what Alan Crabb is known for. Like, most games, he's not going to give you much else other than scoring. He does have the potential. I mean, we saw it against Charlotte last time, 8 rebounds, pretty much nothing else but 29 points. So if he's able to get hot, especially from beyond the arc, I think he could have a ceiling game here again tonight. And he's only 5K on DraftKings, so you don't need that much out of him. I mean, if he can get you 28, 30 points, you're definitely happy there. So I think he's viable in tournaments, and I don't mind Russell here again against a Charlotte team that struggles to defend the 3-point line, because we know he's just going to kind of jack up a ton of 3-pointers. So he's even viable for me. It's just one of those situations where you're not going to see, 30 plus. You probably won't see 30 plus minutes out of him.
Right. Anyone else we glossed over here?
LeVert's fine in tournaments as well. No, none of those guys I'm really looking at in cash, just because, like I said, they're gonna do take the hot hand approach most of the time.
Right. Denver, Chicago next here. Denver favored by 9, 219 over under. Looking at this game and kind of looking at it last night, I realized I was like, oh, the entire starting five for Denver is going to be in play for me tonight.
Yeah, just play them all, everybody. Just. I have no nuggets of information for you. Just play them all.
Oh, but your puns are completely fine. It's when I drop one that it's delete your account.
Yeah.
Your point is
I don't know what point you're trying to make here.
Nikola Jokic here in a really good spot. Like I like the upside. Been obviously scoring at will of late. Like it's a Chicago defense that struggled against centers, especially of late. I don't mind going back to the well on Jokic and basically a lot of these Denver guys.
Yeah, I do like Jokic here. Obviously, we saw him put up another huge game last time out, 60 fantasy points. It took him 47 minutes to get there. I will say that the biggest knock that I have on the Denver Nuggets side of this game, especially with guys like Jokic and Barton and Murray, is the team's assist totals have plummeted with Gary Harris out of the lineup. And I retweeted an article prior to the Miami game by one of the writers for BSN Denver that talked about how bad the team's assist numbers have been when Gary Harris has not been in the lineup. So that does kind of limit their upside a little bit. But that being said, we're still seeing big games out of these guys. So you can roll Jokic if you want to. He has a pretty safe floor and upside, especially against this terrible, terrible Bulls team. I like Wilson Chandler as a cheap option. I really like Paul Millsap, who apparently is off his minutes limit at this point because he played 45 against the Heat. I know that was kind of an important game, but if he's going to be off his minutes limit, 6,300 for him, who he has the ability just to fill it up across the board, I think he's just way too cheap still for the upside he has against the Chicago Bulls team.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I like the front court here a little bit more than the back court. I don't, and obviously you mentioned Chandler. Like I like Will Barton. His price tags did come up a little bit to a point where I'm not super thrilled, but I think he's still viable, especially on DraftKings at 7K. 7,700 on FanDuel is a little too expensive, but obviously I don't mind him. And just given that we know the mints are going to be there, but the mints are there regardless for Barton. Like he's always going to get his.
Yeah, he's always going to get his minutes, and I don't know. I've kind of always preferred him off the bench more as opposed to in the starting lineup. And I will say, like, it took him 46 minutes and a combined 6 blocks and steals to have upside against the Heat. Like, obviously, it is the Chicago Bulls, so he could come out and drop like 120 fantasy points against this terrible team. So I would never say not to play Will Barton, but I do prefer him off the bench. But he's a solid cash game option just because the minutes are going to be there for him.
Yeah, he continues to shoot poorly too. Like you said, he took 21 shot attempts in that game against Miami, only hit 8. He's just basically been shooting really, really badly of late.
Yeah, over his last 5 games, he's 4 of 22 from 3-point range, and shooting like 37% from like overall from the field. So it's going to take a ton of shot attempts and like some peripherals for him to get there tonight, assuming he's not shooting the ball very well.
Yeah. Jamal Murray, like I don't mind here. I do wish he was a little bit cheaper, but obviously a decent spot against the Bulls. Given that he's had some poor shooting games and still has led to pretty heavy minutes, it gives me a little bit more confidence that even if he has a bad outing, like he still should have a pretty decent floor though.
Yeah, it's just because they don't really have anyone else to go with at this point. So he just kind of has to play the minutes. And this is a Chicago Bulls team that, giving up a ton of points, they do struggle against spot-up shooters. And, Murray's spotting up on almost 20% of his possessions. He's one of the better spot-up shooters in the NBA. So I think he's tournament viable. He's not someone that I'm necessarily looking at in cash games, though.
Anyone else here for Denver?
No.
Chicago side of things, we're dealing with these same injuries as last time out. Lauri Markkanen, Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn. Although Blake is also questionable for tonight's game, so it's a new one. But looking at the Chicago side, I don't think there's the value that there was maybe a few games ago.
No, there really isn't. Like Cameron Payne's price is up to 5,300. We saw kind of the downside of Cameron Payne in a fantastic matchup against the Knicks. Still only shot 16%, 2 of 12 from the floor. That's the Cameron Payne experience right there. but he was able to rack up 6 points and or 6 rebounds and 6 assists, which is promising. Um, Cash games, if you want to roll them out, feel free. I mean, you can even get some tournament exposure. It is a great matchup. That being said, I don't know that he has a massive ceiling. Like 32 fantasy points is probably the upside you're looking at. So I don't know. I don't know that you really want to target him in tournaments.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think you'd rather look at some other options like a Bobby Portis if you're desperately trying to get like tournament exposure to the Bulls. Still put up over 30 fantasy points in 25 minutes in that blowout against the Knicks. He's been very solid over the last 5 games or so. I'm willing to go back on the Portis train here, and I like him in cash and GPPs.
I do love the spot for Portis. Obviously, we know the production's there with these guys off the floor is like 1.1 fantasy points per minute, 28% usage rate. So great spot here for him. I don't mind going, with the Denzel Valentines and some of those guys as well. We saw kind of floors out of him against the Knicks, though. Like, I don't know what got into Valentine, but only being able to play 22 minutes against the Knicks and like after torching LeBron, like that's the epitome of the Bulls right there. But yeah, I mean, if you want to sprinkle him in, maybe some Nwaba, feel free. None of these guys stand out as amazing options for me, but I think it starts with Portis, maybe some Valentine, and then Payne for me.
Yeah, Noah Vonleh's still viable as like a cheap cash game option too. Like 20, 25 fantasy points, you're not really expecting anything more. He's just at his price. Like I still think he's viable.
Yeah, he's viable, and even like Felicio in tournaments is viable. I'm not expecting him to continue this hot streak that he's on, but I mean he's still another viable tournament option.
Yeah, and please don't ask me about Paul Zipser. Just please don't. No, just stop. That's it from the Chicago side of things. Clippers and Milwaukee. Clippers on a back-to-back here. Clippers didn't look right, but I kind of like some of these plays here tonight. Like I like going back to DeAndre Jordan. I think he's kind of where I'm going to start with this Clippers side because I'm not as in on like the backcourt guys as I was last night.
Yeah, I think DeAndre Jordan's a great place to start. Obviously, we know centers against Milwaukee. Great spot. I mean, they're 29th in fantasy points allowed, giving up like 55 per game. They're 21st over the last 10 games in defensive efficiency. They struggle to rebound, and DeAndre is a great rebounder. So I think we're looking at a spot here where he can come out and put up a solid game. I mean, 8 had the points last night. The rebounds weren't really there for him, but assists were great for him. He had 3. If he can pull down a couple extra rebounds, he's looking at, almost 50 fantasy point outings. So I do really like him in the spot. So I think I would start there. Saw Tobias Harris only play, 25 minutes. He was questionable with an illness. Apparently wasn't 100%. Don't know that I'd want to target him, assuming he's still probably a little under the weather. But if we get news that he's fine and he's going to play full minutes, it is a great spot to go back to the well with him, down to 7,100 on DraftKings. So I like those two guys. And yeah, the backcourt's kind of tough. Like, I don't know that I really want to go too many places other than maybe Austin Rivers, who's just going to play a ton of minutes.
Yeah, he'd be about it. Like, just because you said like he's going to play a ton of minutes, and that's kind of all I'm looking for. Like, I think cash games, he's fine. I know he's been showing some tournament upside for the price of late, but I just don't think this is an upside place against this Milwaukee team that kind of does limit peripheral stats to opposing point guards.
Yeah, and that's going to really hurt. And I mean, we saw the same thing happen with Lou Williams. Like, it's one of those situations where he didn't shoot very well, 4 of 11 from the floor, wasn't really able to do much else. Yeah, I guess if you want to go back in tournaments, you can. But it's just mostly like Rivers and DeAndre for me, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Much more intrigued with the Milwaukee side of things and their big three. And we'll start with Giannis here. We kind of talked about him a little bit with LeBron, but obviously a very solid spot against the Clippers, who have been awful against small forwards this season. Giannis has picked back up his play. I don't mind building around Giannis tonight as a pay-up option.
Yeah, I don't even mind doing it in tournaments. And I'm usually not the kind of guy that likes to pay up in tournaments, but we're talking about a Clippers team that does struggle to defend the rim. They do give up a bunch of rebounds. So that bodes well for Giannis in this spot, and he's just been playing really, really well. So I think he has a ton of upside in this spot, especially given his price tag. He's 11-1 on DraftKings. 60 plus fantasy points in 3 straight games. I love going back to the well with him, and it's going to be interesting to see if Jabari Parker actually plays more minutes. He's coming off 25 against the Cavaliers. If he's going to start playing 25 plus minutes, he's only 4,500 on DraftKings, and he is 51 on FanDuel. Cash viable at that price tag. I mean, he's a guy who's jacking up a ton of shots in limited minutes, has rebounding potential, and can also rack up a couple other peripherals. I think he has tournament upside given his price tag on DraftKings, so he's an excellent option, I think, as well.
Yeah, I like that call. Chris Middleton's the other one that I'm taking a look at here. Clippers' second most fantasy points allowed to shooting guards over the last 10, allowing opposing shooting guards to shoot 46% from the field and three. Matching that up with Middleton's already hot streak here of late. I'm going back. I don't feel like Middleton is priced out of my range just yet, even though we've seen it move up, but below 8K on both sides. If I'm not getting Giannis exposure, I think I'm going to be looking at like Middleton and Bledsoe.
Yeah, I do love me some Chris Middleton tonight. Obviously, he gives you the safe floor with the minutes, safe floor for cash games. And as you mentioned, he's been really hot from the floor recently. So, I mean, over his last 4 games, shooting like 57%, averaging almost 25 real points per game. And he's got the rebounding and assist upside. So I love going back to the well with Chris Middleton. 7,700 on DraftKings, still really, really fair price. 76 on FanDuel. It's a fair price there. So I think I lean him over Bledsoe a little bit because there are a lot of great point guard options tonight, but can't argue with Bledsoe either. I don't necessarily mind if you're going to fade Giannis getting exposure to the other two like wing/guards on this team.
Yeah, like I look, like his assist numbers have been solid, eight or more for the last 5 games. You know, he's had some good matchups of late and has taken advantage of them. This is obviously a spot I don't mind. As you mentioned, there are, a group of point guards around him where I think obviously you probably are looking at Giannis and Middleton first. And if you realize, I don't have any Milwaukee exposure, like I think you can look at Bledsoe.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely get some Milwaukee exposure because this Clippers team has really, really struggled. I mean, they've allowed more than 120 points in each of their last 3 games. So getting some Milwaukee exposure, even stacking the Bucks, probably not a terrible idea.
No, definitely not. Any interest in like Henson here at all?
No, not really. Not. I mean, what's his?
Not with Parker. I mean,
yeah. I mean, he's 5,100 minutes. Were not there for Cleveland, but Cleveland not a team that plays big that often. So now that we are going up against the Clippers team that does have a traditional big man, you might see a few extra minutes out of Henson. And at 5,100, he's tournament viable. He's 5K on FanDuel, tournament viable there too, but not someone I'm looking at in cash.
Yep. Indiana, New Orleans. You got Indiana taking on New Orleans team on a back-to-back before their back-to-back-to-back.
Back-to-back.
Indiana side here. I like quite a few of these options. I'm a little bummed like Darren Collison jumped into the starting lineup the last time out. I know we hyped him up quite a bit against the Lakers. I don't mind going back to the well, even at a slightly higher price tag. It's a good spot for him. Collison's been playing well. That DraftKings price of 5,500 is still really intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy he jumped into the starting lineup and put up a huge game against the Lakers because I wrote him up. And he had a huge game, so I'm happy about that. But I do like the spot for him against this Pelicans team. Has been bad against point guards this season. 20th in fantasy points allowed, 16th in defensive efficiency over the last 10 games. Great spot for him. They're, as you mentioned, on a back-to-back, so maybe a little tired legs here. So I do like going back to the well with him. And it could be even more interesting if Jrue Holiday isn't able to go, because that would be really, really good for both Oladipo and Collison in the spot.
Yeah, I think if Holiday sits, I'll have some more interest in Oladipo here. I don't know if he's kind of just a little bit tapped out on the year, though.
He might be. I mean, he might just be run down. I mean, we've seen the scoring numbers haven't been great. Shooting numbers have been okay, but nothing eye popping. He's shooting 40% over the last 5 games. Season average 47, so that's a little bit down. And some of the other numbers, the assist numbers, he didn't even have an assist against the Lakers after averaging like 4 assists per game this season. Could just be tired. It could be that, or it could just be, maybe he's got something personal going on and needs to snap out of his funk. I think he's viable in tournaments at that price. He's 8,200 on DraftKings. I would definitely be getting some exposure there. 9K or 8,800 on FanDuel. Probably not, but I definitely like him in tournaments on DraftKings.
Yeah, I like that price on DraftKings. Miles Turner's interesting in GPPs as well here in this spot. He did crush New Orleans earlier this year, but it's been a long time since then. There's been a lot of volatility with him this year, but I like the potential in this spot at pretty fair price tags. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be going to Miles Turner either, so I think he's going to be a great ownership play. So yeah, I think Turner has the upside in the spot, but definitely not a cash game guy with his floor.
Yeah, definitely not someone you're looking at in cash. I mean, we saw it against the Raptors. Obviously, not a great matchup, but 5 fantasy points. So 2 points and 0 rebounds in 20 minutes. So we know there's potential for him to flop, but there's also potential for him to have a big game. I mean, he's coming out 21-7 against the Lakers, had 19-10 against Boston, 21-12 against this Pelicans team last time out. Definitely a guy that you can look at in tournaments. Thaddeus Young made it into my tournament article. I do love him in this spot as well. He's coming off 36 minutes against the Lakers, obviously with no Sabonis in there. It's going to lead to some extra minutes for Thaddeus Young, some extra field goal attempts. I mean, he has double-digit field goal attempts in 3 of the last 4. Rebounding upside is he's shown 10 and 9 rebounds in 2 of the last 4 games. Shown 38, 40 fantasy point upside. I do like him in the spot against the Pelicans team that without Cousins really struggles to rebound and has been really bad against power forwards recently.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind that. Always looking at Thad Young, especially when he drops to these price tags.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he's kind of just a little too cheap. I mean, 55 on FanDuel, like that's it's really, really interesting. And one of the things that really does help him in this spot is the steals. I mean, 4 against Toronto, 2 against the Sixers, and the Pelicans. One of the worst. They're giving up like 8.5 steals per game to opponents this season. So I do really, really like the spot for him.
You buying in on Lance Stevenson, back-to-back big games. Like the fact that his price is 4,100 on FanDuel. He's 45 on DraftKings. I don't want to go there because I just feel like it's kind of point chasing, but if he's going to play 25 plus minutes.
I do kind of think it's chasing a little bit because I mean, prior to these 2 games, we saw the floor out of him 17, 18 minutes. Minutes haven't been there for him at all times. So it's someone that I don't think you can look at in cash. But if you want to roll him out in tournaments, feel free. It could be chasing. I don't know what his ownership's going to be like. But it is a Pelicans team that has struggled against wings. He did torch them the last time they played, 29 fantasy points. So he had 14 and 8 in that game. So he's 4,500 on DraftKings. You mentioned 4,100 on FanDuel. If he gets you a similar return on that salary, that's a pretty solid tournament play right there.
New Orleans side of things here, obviously, Drew Holiday is going to be something to keep an eye on. You mentioned Ian Clark yesterday as being a guy you can still trust either way. You willing to go back in a value sense?
Yeah, I'm definitely willing to go back in a value sense. I mean, we saw him play 30 minutes last night without Drew Holiday. Didn't get into the starting lineup because they just shuffled things around a little bit. But so they're wanting to kind of keep him off the bench. But he's still a solid option here. I mean, he had 25 fantasy points in that game. Could come out and put up a solid game here. So I do like him regardless of Holiday status or any other situation in which maybe Rondo or someone else were to sit. So he's a good value option. We talked about a few other value plays as well. So just someone else to consider if you need value.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Rondo coming off a monster game. I can't really inflict, like, Indiana's been very stout against point guards of late, like really, really stout.
Yeah, they really have. I mean, they're second in defensive efficiency over the last 10 games. It's been one of their strengths most of the season. I wouldn't say no to Rondo in tournaments. Obviously, it is a situation we do need to keep an eye on because they're on the back-to-back, and they are 5 and 6 nights, and who knows if they're going to rest somebody. Played 30 minutes last night. It's a situation where I would be a little concerned, but if you want to sprinkle him in tournaments, go for it. We touched on Etuan Moore yesterday a little bit. I think you can use him in cash at his current price tag. The minutes are solid. We saw him play a few extra minutes because no Drew Holiday. If Holiday were to sit again, he would be someone that you go back to the well on. And The Pacers have struggled against spot up shooters, which does really benefits each one more in the spot.
Check Diallo. I mean, back-to-back games, 24 minutes. Hovering right around that 24 fantasy point, performance. I kind of don't mind him bare min.
Checks out.
Checks out. Huh? Oh man. I can't wait for baseball season if this is what we're getting NBA.
Yeah, buddy. No, I do like the spot for him. They're giving him some more run. So he's a value guy that you can consider. I don't know if they're going to continue giving him extended run here, but 24 minutes back-to-back games, but minutes weren't there in the couple games before that. But yeah, he's a tournament option here, and he's been playing really well. So I do like him in tournaments.
Davis hasn't really paid off the price tag in 4 games. I mean, he's been up over 50 over the last 2. Interesting spot here, obviously, against Indiana. Like, I like the spot. A little bit worried about here during this stretch with Davis. I think tomorrow is going to be the very interesting night with Davis on the 3rd, if he even plays. But there's been no hint that he's going to rest any of these 3 games.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from one of the beat writers yesterday that there's no indication that they're going to rest Davis in any of these games, but that could change if, the games are close or they go into overtime or something like that. The Pelicans injury report did just come out. Holiday questionable, Solomon Hill ruled out for rest. So no Davis on there. He did leave the game for a couple minutes with a lump on his shin or something like that. Of course, Twitter freaked out, and the Anthony Davis scheduled locker room tweet, all that stuff happened again, and he ended up being just fine. If you want to roll him out, feel free, but he's not someone that I'm looking at in tournaments.
No, I think I'm looking at some cheaper guys from this New Orleans team, and I think I'm going to be looking at Giannis still as that pay-up option.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly where I'm going, and I will say, like, I know Mirotic has been shooting really, really, really poorly recently, but his price is down to like 5,600, and it's not a terrible matchup for him.
No, especially he's still rebounding well, still has a defensive stats upside. Like, there still is upside, as we saw in that Boston game, despite him still shooting poorly. So at these prices, I'm much more comfortable taking shots in tournaments now.
Yeah, for sure.
Washington, San Antonio, we're not getting a real barn burner to kind of wrap up this slate. It's by far the lowest total of the night. 2 kind of more slower defensive-minded teams. I am not thrilled with this matchup, but I will say I'm very interested in Bradley Beal at his price tags.
Bradley Beal is very, very interesting, and the guy that I wrote about in the tournament article, Tomas Satoransky, is also very interesting from a tournament perspective. We're talking about a guy that the minutes have been outstanding for him recently. He's been playing really well. Flashed upside against the Timberwolves. He's shown that he has 40-plus fantasy point upside recently, and the Spurs, 26th, 27th in defensive efficiency against point guards over the last 10 games. So I do like Satoransky a lot, and I like Beal. I mean, that price is just really cheap for a guy that's still producing solid outings. Assist numbers have been solid. Shooting has been down in a couple of games, especially from beyond the arc, but can't go wrong with the usage and the minutes that he's playing in cash, even though it is a tough matchup.
I just think these guys are going to completely overlooked. I love the Satoransky call you have here at his price tag. Like, he's not going to be a guy that people are going to be actively seeking out to play. Beal, I kind of guess I really more of the price tag on FanDuel 7,600. Like, I feel like that's way too cheap for Beal here. Yes, I know he's had a couple of very down games. You can relate back to Minnesota and Miami. But I think it's a spot where he can come up and put up 35-plus fantasy points in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just it's a spot, like, if you're dying to get exposure to the late night hammer, what is it, 8:30 Central Time game, you can get exposure that way. But I still think I'm going Satoransky, especially on DraftKings at 5,400. Yeah,
nice price tag there. Front court guys, I don't have a ton of interest in. I think Otto Porter might be a little bit priced out of my range on tonight's slates. Like, there's some other options like Hollis Jefferson in that range. You have Carroll and some of these guys where I'm not actively really looking to look at the front court of Washington.
Yeah, I'm not terribly intrigued by him. I will say, if you want to get exposure to like Markieff Morris, feel free. I mean, he's still a solid cash game option, especially given his price, but I'm not like dying to get exposure to any of those guys.
Spurs side of things here. Obviously, I think when you look at Spurs, some back-to-back high upside games out of Aldridge. He's been absolutely dominating. I'm okay going back to the well here. Even at some higher price tags, I still think below 9K on DraftKings is fair. 9,700 on FanDuel, it's starting to push my buttons a little bit, but I still don't mind it.
Yeah, on FanDuel, it's more of a cash floor option given that price tag. But I mean, he still has over 50, almost 60 fantasy points in 2 straight games. So I mean, he has shown the upside, and like especially on DraftKings, like I really like that price on DraftKings. The minutes are going to be there for him. Spurs battling for a playoff position. They need him to really be involved, and they need him to be a focal point of the offense. And so that's going to lead to him having big games. And I mean, we've seen 20 plus field goal attempts and 3 straight games. So I would not necessarily be afraid of going back to the well with Aldridge.
No, definitely not. And even have a couple of down games. I don't mind Kyle Anderson and GPPs here. I think people are going to be obviously concerned and looking at kind of this recent stretch here, but there's some upside in this spot against Washington. Like taking wings. I mean, we look over the last 10 games, they're allowing the 5th most fantasy points to opposing small forwards, 22nd defensive efficiency. Not a ton has really changed this year. Like they've struggled against small forwards all season long. I think Anderson's an interesting GPP play. It's just going to be completely overlooked.
Yeah, I do like him a lot as a GPP option. You mentioned, Washington really bad against small forwards. Minutes have been a little concerning for him, but I still think he's a very, very viable tournament option. And the same goes with DeJounte Murray. Like his price is elevated a little bit, but I still think he's a viable tournament option as well.
Yep. That's kind of it for me. That's it for this Washington or San Antonio side. Like I don't have a ton of interest in like the guards here at all outside of Murray.
Yeah, neither do I.
So that's it for us. We'll be signing off here for a few days and then going into MLB next week. NBA stuff on the site will continue to run as usual, cheat sheets, optimizer, all that. But we will be getting some MLB content out for opening day. But for a final time here, let's play a game. Who hit a buzzer beater last night? Do you remember? You don't remember?
Why do you have to be like this? Why do you have to be like this? I don't give you a hard time when the Celtics get beat up and lose like at the buzzer. I don't think it's actually happened this season, but wait, no, it did happen. Didn't Manu sink a buzzer beater against you guys?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so it's probably much worse to get it to lose to a buzzer beater by a 40-year-old than it is Marcus Morris.
Man, let's go most real points tonight. Under the 10K mark.
Most real points under 10K. I'm gonna go with LaMarcus Aldridge.
Damn it. Oh man, that's tough. Damn, I'm wasting time here. I was not prepared for this at all. Man, crap. Give me Kemba here. Let's hope he shows out for one more game here.
I dig it.
So that's it for us. You can go to DaveFantasyCafe.com. You can check out Brent's GPP article for tonight's slate. And good luck, and stay tuned with us for baseball season if you are playing baseball.
Good luck tonight.